David Bruce here with another 3-for-all, and this is 3 Eddie Van Halen licks from 1982. And Eddie Van Halen, I'm sure for most of people watching this, is a huge influence. I know for me personally, he's the entire reason I started playing the guitar. And I went from, playing Little League and playing baseball to just hopelessly being obsessed with the guitar and with rock and with music. And, he's a huge influence on me. And I have done, 2 episodes of Chordplay, and we also have a episode of Breaking Chords on this channel where I'm talking about Eddie's, rhythm work and his approach to kind of tapping arpeggios. And I'm finally getting around to doing a 3-for-all. And the footage is from 1982 from Baltimore, Maryland, which Van Halen would have been on their Diver Down tour. And I was kind of waiting to find the right footage, and I was looking for really early footage. And there is some floating around out there, but it's really hard to hear, it's really hard to see, it's kind of grainy because it's old. But I did locate this footage from 82, and it works perfectly. And there's some symmetrical ideas that we're going to have in here. Of course, the tapping licks, going to pop in at some point. And there's some cool ideas. So definitely, if you're a Van Halen fan, stick around because this is going to break down even more of Eddie's secrets. Well, one thing I'll say about Eddie's live solos over the years, I know, when I first started playing the guitar, I came upon Live Without a Net, live home video with when Sammy was in the band. And I can remember a period where I watched that guitar solo on Live Without a Net every day after school. I mean, that went on for a couple years. I would get home from school, make a little snack or whatever, and I would sit in the living room and just cue that up and just watch him play, his live solo. And even at that time, when I was like 12 or 13 years old, I sat and I wondered, I wonder what Eddie played back in the 70s, or what did he play in the early 80s when Roth was still in the band? And my mind would drift and wonder about that. And I wished, I could time travel and go back and see him play like in 78 or 80 or whenever. And then luckily, with YouTube, we can go back and we can actually see bootlegs and clips and little pieces of the past. And it's interesting to notice Eddie kind of fleshed out this solo over the years, and it just grew and grew as he added more, instrumentals and little solos, cathedral and little guitars and some of that. And there's little pieces of Eruption and Spanish Fly. And it's just cool, the way that he would, he'd add like the tap part to Mean Street, and he would make, his guitar solo like one giant song and like a greatest hits or greatest licks. And it's interesting, the further you go back, you can hear these little licks in his solo that he continued to evolve and play, well into the, past the year 2000 even. And that's really interesting to see the evolution of that giant solo that Eddie's been playing and refining for decades. As far as the tuning for this video, it is slightly out of tune. It's technically in between standard tuning and a half step down. So I've tuned my guitar to Eddie, and we're going to be out of tune during this lesson. So the solo itself, it starts with this typical just A power chord, an open position, and Alex and Michael are kind of, backing him up, and then he just starts, shredding like a madman. So I'm going to base, the majority of these licks, at least in the beginning, around A loosely, because it's prominently, starting with this. But also notice that's the pitch of the guitar, so we're in between standard and a half step down. So I know definitely in the early days of Van Halen, he tuned down a half step a lot, in live performances. Sometimes he'd be a little bit out of tune. I don't know if he actually intentionally tuned that way. I mean, it could have been a transfer like from the VHS or the analog to digital, and then the transfer onto YouTube. That could have affected the, the pitch a little bit too. And he may have just been a little bit out of tune as well. But just to make things, kind of streamlined and simple, I've tuned to Eddie. That way my guitar is going to sound the same pitch as the clips. And you'll have to retune, your guitar to match this tuning. And then of course you can practice these licks, in standard tuning or a half step down, after you work through the video. So just a heads up. The first lick is the sequence Legato Run, and I've definitely caught Eddie playing, different versions of this over the years. And you can hear versions of it in, Spanish Fly, from Van Halen 2. in other live solos that he's performed, but it looks and sounds like this. One more time. And once again, you know, he kind of hits that A at the beginning of a solo. So if we relate that lick to the key of A, he's kind of implying A Phrygian technically in the beginning. And then the next, you know, whole step shape, you know, is dipping more, I guess, into kind of A natural minor. And I really like that wide interval kind of reach at the end. It's really unusual, but it catches your attention. And it's just interesting the way he's just blurring through, you know, those patterns. So I think Eddie's really just thinking of a symmetrical shape, and he's flying through it. I don't think he's actually thinking of what scale, you know, he's playing right there. Really cool lick. The next lick contains these symmetrical kind of scale runs again. And once again, Eddie's not really thinking about an actual scale. He's just grabbing a, you know, a fretboard shape or a pattern on the neck and then running it up, you know, like a sequence. So it looks like this. And I just kind of end it right there on A. He keeps going, you know, higher, and then he kind of, you know, turns it into something else. So I just wanted to kind of give it an ending, and I'm trying to relate it back to A once again. But there, we're really just grabbing these dual, you know, whole step fingerings. And then just running through that with legato or hammer-ons. And then take that shape and then move it up another whole step. You can come up with a whole bunch of different variations of doing that. And he's really just racing, you know, through those top two strings. And he technically borrowed that idea from Al Di Meola. And, you know, when Al Di Meola kind of unveiled that back when, you know, he was playing with Return to Forever, he basically was running, you know, natural minor. You know, an actual scale. And Eddie's really just racing along those same two strings, but he's not really playing a scale. He's just playing a symmetrical, you know, pattern up the fretboard. It sounds cool, but it's not really a scale. It's just kind of a blur of these notes. The next lick is this crazy legato, you know, kind of sequenced phrase, and you can catch Eddie, you know, playing different versions of this in Eruption and Spanish Fly. And I've also heard Paul Gilbert, you know, mention and kind of talk about this lick too. And Paul plays, you know, different mutations and versions of this lick. So it's definitely been around the block, and it's kind of a typical, you know, kind of lick in Eddie's arsenal. But it looks like this. Slowly, we're basically doing this. And it's just this crazy, you know, it sounds like something, you know, like bees are chasing after you or something. It's just this crazy, you know, flurry of notes. And Eddie's a master at symmetrical, you know, scales and finding different ways of using patterns and, you know, fingerings on the guitar fretboard, but making it musical and actually making it work, you know, in key. So that shape, you can actually find him playing, you know, and he'll kind of move that around. And then you can also hear him move it down. So right there, if we just take that that symmetrical shape and just outline, you know, the 4th, 5th, and 7th fret on all 6 strings. That's basically kind of pinpointing like an A hybrid blues scale. And the A hybrid blues scale would have, you know, the root, the minor third, the major third, the fourth, the flat fifth, the flat seven, the major seven, and the root again. Right? So if we relate that pattern of notes right there to A, and we think of that hybrid blues scale, you know, there's our major third right there, that C sharp. There's a fourth. There's a fifth, E. There's a passing tone, that F sharp. There's the flat 7, G. There's A, the root. There's the ninth. There's the minor third. There's a fourth. There's the flat 5. There's the regular fifth. And there's the sixth. And then there's G sharp, which would technically be the major 7. And then there's our root again. And there's a 9, randomly, a B note. So technically that 4, 5, and 7 fingering could work if you know what you're doing, and Eddie definitely knows what he's doing. So in A, or A7, you could run straight across that. And that kind of fits over A. Now if we move to D, another one of Eddie's favorite keys. Or you can move to E, another favorite key of Eddie's. So it's interesting that you can kind of find a way to blur in key, even though you're not really playing a full scale. You're just playing a pattern of notes. But that's really interesting. Here's a bonus lick from this live solo, and this is a tapped pedal point idea that revolves around E harmonic minor. And Eddie's been playing different versions of this for a really long time, and I've seen other live solos where he played, you know, variations and versions of this. And I know it's in the Live Without a Net solo too, but here he is playing it back in '82, and it looks and sounds like this. He kind of ends on C in this '82 footage, and in Live Without a Net, he actually added this little melodic slide, and I was waiting for it, but he didn't play it, you know, in the Diver Down solo, but he did play it, you know, in that Live Without a Net solo. Something like that. But with the pedal point tapping part, he's basically using the B note here on the 12th fret as the pedal point, you know, the note that's repeated over and over and over. And then he's really just ascending, you know, E, F sharp to G, and then basically A, G to F sharp, A, G to F sharp. And then he's kind of moving down that F sharp, E, and then grabs that D sharp, which is bringing it to harmonic minor. Right there. So it's technically that last note, you know, that kind of signals harmonic minor. You know, really cool phrase. And I've definitely made some variations of that lick over the years, and it's a famous lick, so I'm sure there's other people out there that have made variations of that too. It almost sounds like a Baroque period, you know, like Bach or something like that. And, you know, one of my variations looks like this. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do with that. And of course you can take it to other strings too. You know, and it sounds really cool on lower strings. You know, so don't be afraid to experiment. You know, there's a whole world of ideas out there that you can tap into just by playing around and kind of experimenting with your guitar. going to wrap this look at 3 licks from Eddie Van Halen from 1982, and obviously Eddie is a massive influence on me. I wouldn't be sitting here playing guitar if it wasn't for him, and I can say that with absolute, sincerity and authority. It's like, no, he really helped me, notice the guitar, and I begged my parents to get one, and the rest is history. I've been obsessed ever since I was a little kid, and a lot of it has to do with Eddie Van Halen. So, huge influence, massively important, a legend of the guitar, one of the most important electric guitarists ever. And I did say one of the most. There are other ones that are essential too, but Eddie's up there. I mean, he's a legend. So anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content material. Thank you.